Hey everybody, Greg here, and I just got back from seeing The Dark Knight Rises. This review is going to be fairly spoiler heavy. Um, so short spoiler-free version. I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was all that good, but I didn't think it was bad. I was just very underwhelmed. Excuse me if you hear any other sounds in the background and stuff. The house is pretty active. I usually don't record audio when it's this active, but this is the only real chance I have to film this in a timely manner. Gotta strike while the iron's hot. So, yes, The Dark Knight Rises. I would put it above Batman Begins. I would not, very not, put it anywhere close to The Dark Knight. So I guess in that scheme of things, it ranks. Yeah, it probably ranks as my fourth on my list of Batman movies. The ranging Batman Returns is my favorite, followed by The Dark Knight, followed by Tim Burton's 1989 Batman, and then this. So where to start? Well, the story of The Dark Knight Rises is a lot more Batman Beginsy than The Dark Knighty, if that makes sense. It's much more of a traditional three-act structure. It's more of a traditional comic book film, while still being part of this series. It's it actually, yeah, it really has a lot more to do with Batman Begins than it does The Dark Knight. It continues on those storylines with the League of Shadows, with the legacy of Ra's al Ghul, um, and it's largely about Bruce Wayne rediscovering himself as Batman. So it's kind of origin story 2.0, and actually, he kind of does that twice in this series. He returns as Batman, and then he falls to a really low point and has to return again. So yeah, this feels more like a sequel to Batman Begins than it does The Dark Knight, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, despite how much I dislike the Batman Begins. But I don't know something about this film feels more more like Nolan was contractually obligated to produce it uh, than not. I don't feel like Nolan had a lot to say with this film. It's topical. It's topical in that it kind of is using Occupy Wall Street imagery. There's a Bane attacks a stock market. There's this supposed cultural war going on. Unfortunately, this idea of the rich versus the poor aspect of it is not very clear. Much in the same way that Batman Begins, the fight was for Gotham, but Gotham was very poorly defined. The stakes here are also very poorly defined, if they even mattered, which they don't, because this is all. The plot is basically the central conflict is Bane holds up a city, and he cuts it off from the rest of the world, and everyone, he goes like, all right, citizens, everyone's on the same level, go have fun. But this is all just some weak charade as we wait for this bomb to go off. And I don't know why I just don't know why they can't blow it up now. The whole point is to destroy Gotham because Ra's al Ghul wanted to destroy Gotham, but I just don't know why they have to go through all these theatrics. Why they can't just cut to the chase? But yeah. So all those aspects of the film, the whole Occupy rich versus poor aspects of the film, those are just window dressing, really. They're not really explored themes like the themes were explored in The Dark Knight. I mean, really, when you get down to it, there's very little introspection. There's very little exploration of themes in this film. It's very much an action film. And that's a little frustrating coming off The Dark Knight, which was not an action film. It was a thriller drama. And this one's just so much more conventional, and I guess that's disappointing to a degree. Again, it's not like that stuff is necessarily bad. The action sequences are pretty good, and the actors are really good. And in fact, I should comment, the action scenes have actually improved to a great degree. In my last two Batman retrospects, I really bitched on Christopher Nolan's inability to shoot action films, but it really seems like he's cleaned that aspect up a lot in this film. Maybe I missed it. Maybe I'll have to get this on DVD and do my frame by frame inspection, which is a lot more fun than you'd think. But it really seemed like the cameras were steadier. They were pulled back so we could actually see the combatants. There was very little shaky cam. There were longer cuts. I didn't notice any extreme 180-degree rule breaking. It was very consistent and a hell of a lot better than the stuff we've had before. So, kudos on that. I guess as an action film, it improves on the action film aspects of Batman Begins. It's a really huge improvement over that, but it also really does not reach those dark thematic levels that The Dark Knight rose. It doesn't really get there. And it's kind of the same structure where it's one guy holding the city hostage. But, I mean, Bane is probably the weakest of the villains in these three films. In part that he's really ill-defined, and things just happen way too easily for him. With The Dark Knight, the Joker built up the level of control he had over the city. He gradually, through steps, made the city more afraid of him, and therefore gaining more control over them. You really saw that rise to power and that you really saw that rise to power. And with this film, you really don't get that. Bane makes one attack on the city, and then he kind of comes out of the shadows and he's like, "I'm in control now," and everyone just really buys it. And there's really no reason for them to buy it. There's no reason for the citizens to just storm these guys or not do what he says. I mean, there's a scene where Bane finds this confession letter from Gordon that reveals that the whole Harvey Dent thing was a lie and all that, and he reads it on television. And yeah, that's a real letter, but none of the citizens of Gotham have any reason to believe him. They just take his word for it, and that's not really earned in any way. Other than that, I mean, they try to play that control aspect of the character, but he really doesn't. That's really not earned. And when you take that away, the guy's just a brute. He's an opponent of. He's a physical opponent. All he can do to Batman is throw punches at him, and he's got like a really obvious weakness, like he's a boss in a video game. Strike his face mask. Oh, that works. Not to mention the way he's finally taken out is really quick and sudden and kind of cheap if you think about it. Because they have to pull the old switcheroo with the real villain, like they did in Batman Begins, and I really wasn't feeling that. I mean, it's not like it wasn't built up to. It was built up to. I guess it was earned, but it just, like, by the time that twist happened, it's like, why do I care? Everyone does a good job acting, but a lot of the roles seem really kind of. Everyone does a pretty good job of acting, but a lot of the roles don't seem to have much going for them. There's Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, Blake, and you could do the whole red letter media uh, thing, the red letter media character challenge with him. You could be like, oh, what defines this character? And if you could take away what he looks like, if you describe the character, but not describe the character without saying what he looks like or what he does in the film, and I'd be like, well, Blake is determined and doesn't really have anything to do in the movie besides a few kind of subplotty sting operations. And this is definitely a spoiler, but at the beginning of the film, he knows Bruce Wayne is Batman for no real reason. He walks up to the mansion and he's like, "Hey, Bruce Wayne, I know you're Batman because I saw you at an orphanage once and you had a not happy face, and that somehow means I knew you weren't Batman." That was just flat out ridiculous. Um, yeah, and then there, there's the reveal of his true name at the end of the film, and that was just a groaner. That was really just, really. Anne Hathaway as Selena Kyle. They don't call her Catwoman or anything. She's okay. She didn't have a lot of scenes really at the end of it, uh, but she was a pretty strong character. And it was nice that they didn't play her as the Batman love interest. Oh wait, yeah, they kind of did it the last 5 minutes, and that just kind of came out of nowhere. Um, I mean, I like the independence of the character. I kind of liked her story, but she kind of converts at the end, and I don't think Catwoman should ever convert like that. I think that's pretty stupid. Um, Beyond that, all the old standbys are really just kind of hand in. I mean, no, that sounds like they're doing a bad job. All the actors do a great job with what they're given. It's just characters like Alfred and Fox. They don't really get much to do in this film. They kind of Alfred's barely in this movie at all. He's at the beginning and he's like, Bruce Wayne, will you stop? And then Bruce Wayne's like, no. And Alfred's like, look, I'm stepping out later. Um, and then there's this detective character who I don't know what his deal is, but he goes around through part of the films like, I'm gonna catch Batman, and then it's like. And then there's this detective character played, I think his name was Daggett, and I really don't know why he could have been cut out entirely. He's just kind of filling in minutes. I just it's really kind of hard to pinpoint issues with this film because there's nothing really noticeably bad about it. It's not interesting. It's not deep. It's not the Dark Knight, which I guess nothing can be, but this feels like a step backwards for the series. Not as far as Batman Begins. I thank God, but this. I guess you could go around. You could find plot holes and all this stuff, but I mean, it's not. It's not a bad movie. It's not a bad movie, but it is so underwhelming of a movie that you wonder why it's got so. It's just so sad that it's got so many people's blood boiling. Reviewers getting death threat. This bullshit in Colorado. You know, it's just they're getting all this hyped up for what? This movie isn't that amazing. This is not the second coming of Christ in movie form. I know The Dark Knight was good. I was excited for this movie, but Jesus Christ, we need to get over ourselves, people. I mean, in the end, this will be remembered as a good movie. This will probably be uh, everyone's second favorite Batman movie after The Dark Knight. Um, but I mean, if I had to recommend this, I would recommend it as a rental. No, really. I mean, there's it's very much a more traditional action film than The Dark Knight. It's very much a typical summer blockbuster, and The Dark Knight was just so much more than that that it's sad to see it go back to that. I don't know. I mean, if there was one word to sum it up, I'd say meh. This film is meh. Pretty much every aspect of it is meh. The villains are meh. The story is meh. Okay, the acting's not meh. The acting's pretty good. And the action scenes have improved. I guess the action scenes are meh too. They've just improved from god awful to meh. So, um, yeah, it caps the series kinda. I don't see Christopher Nolan coming back to this, but it's not close ended really. But um, I'm just I'm just extremely underwhelmed, and it's not a bad time at the theater. I mean, in terms of the movie itself, it's not a bad time. I don't wouldn't say you felt like you wasted your money, but it's just not an amazing film going experience. It's not worth this hype. Oh, that was my thoughts. My weird rambly thoughts. And maybe when it comes out in DVD and I can watch it again, I'll come up with something more concise. Maybe even do another proper retrospect video. But in the meantime, uh, yeah, if this still looks like your thing, go ahead and check it out. And I will see you later. Preferably with more Animorphs, since nobody seems to want me to do anything else. Bye.